Welcome to Mapping the Matrix. You will hear from Tony Gleason about his definition of the group matrix. That's not part of my presentation, so I'm going to jump straight down to the section that I will be speaking about. Before I do that, I will just quickly introduce myself. I'm Vera Auerbach. I'm a member of the Australian Association of Group Psychotherapists. I'm part of the organising committee for the Sydney Outreach for Group Therapy. I trained as a group analyst, a child and adolescent psychoanalytic psychotherapist, and a clinical psychologist. So the presentation today is part of our outreach to clinicians who are working with groups. So I'd firstly like to welcome everybody that's here. So this is our outreach, and no question is too simple. And following on from Anthony, I often think about us having a lens from which to conceptualize. So that can be the internal, the intrapsychic, then the sort of individual outside world level, and then the group as a whole level, the family, the work group, our tribe. And then, of course, there's the societal level, the country level. So the important message of today is that a group analyst sees the group as a whole being. And my presentation today has really arisen from my attempts to teach beginning group therapists how to think about and map their group sessions. So as well as from my casual lecturing, where students often have to do some research, often how do you do unconscious, research into the unconscious, and this Matrix Representational Grid I will be presenting actually maps the unconscious processes in the group. And I think it's a really wonderful tool, and that's why I'm presenting it today. This tool was developed between 1984 and 1986 by a Swedish group analyst and psychiatrist called Goran Ahlin, and I really feel it should not be forgotten. So here I am 40 years later, refreshing everybody's memories about it. So I guess what I really wanted to point out is the obvious, which is that the circle has always been part of us, of ancient civilizations. The Jungians would call it the collective unconscious. In this Aboriginal painting, you can see the circle, the campfire. The U's are for people sitting. And I just feel, I just want to point out that it is this collective unconscious is within all of us about being in a group. So when we're talking about these psychoanalytic psychotherapies, these group therapies or group analysis, we've got this basic assumption that they're unconscious psychic processes that are always going on. How our past, our personal history influences the present way, and these unconscious processes are always there. So, and these processes surface in present day relationships that we have in the outer world with the other, so in our dialogues and in our interactions. And that's like an assumption, I know I'm stating the obvious, but sometimes I think it just needs to be said that we believe in the unconscious. So I guess I wanted to again show, Stonehenge, all these circles in every country. So there's this concept of the circle which has always been seen as a symbol for the group. And group psychotherapy deals with at least 2 systemic levels of human relationships. The individual and then the collective multi-personal group as a whole. So the non-conscious or the unconscious, what we call the latent group matrix that Tony's just talked about, it exerts its influence on the manifest observable levels of the group interaction through what Goran Ahlin called the group determinants, but I will cover them shortly. So this matrix representational grid is a diagrammatic method, and I'll show you the diagram shortly, but I don't want you to get scared, for observing the operation of these determinants related to the group themes that emerge via the group dialogue. So when we grow up, we're born into a dyadic situation, mother-infant. It quickly becomes a triad, the mother, father, infant. Then the family is your first group as a whole. Then you get peers at school, at work, and you enter society. So basically what we believe is that even when you're not present in a group, the group still exists as a representation in your mind, and all the blueprints that you have from that, often the first family group experience, are inside of you. And group therapy then can restructure that blueprint and support or help heal the sort of damaged psyches or people's inner world and develop the interpersonal capacity. So it's a really important form of treatment. So let's get down to the theories. I'm just going to say that, so today, Tony's introduced the matrix. I'm going to be the most theoretical type of lecture, really. Then we're moving into a more conversation, and then we're moving into being part of a group. So I guess I'm hoping to provide some scaffolding and theory for those people who are new today, so that it might not be too overwhelming and more easily digestible of what happens towards the end of the day. So Fuchs is the guy that came up with group analysis as a concept. And as Tony has said, there's 2 types of matrices. There's a foundation matrix, which is what I've just covered, the collective unconscious, the circle, what we bring into the group. And then there's the group matrix. Both are concepts from group analysis, but they have distinct meanings, and I'm just going to revise them just quickly so everyone knows. So the foundation matrix is the larger social and cultural network, and it represents the shared unconscious connections we have, our historical background. Say if we're a refugee, if we've been persecuted, we've been bullied. It is something pre-existing, and it is not created by the current group that one enters. So it consists of cultural norms, family influences, and social conditioning. But the foundation matrix, in a sense, forms the foundation upon which the group interactions then start to take place. So it's important not to, I think, confuse the two. The group matrix, on the other hand, is the dynamic evolving web of relationships and communication that happens live within the group, that the group creates. So it is the field of interaction where members exchange thoughts, feelings, experiences, memories, and it's created through the group interaction, and it evolves over time. So it obviously consists of both conscious and unconscious communication patterns. And it is that facilitates therapeutic change via fostering connection, what we call mirroring and insight. So that's really, really important to understand that difference. And I'm just gonna go to the next slide. So the key difference between the group matrix and the foundation matrix is that the foundation matrix is the larger societal historical backdrop that influence group members before they join. We all are bringing that with us today. And then the group matrix, which we're going to create later, is the here and now interpersonal web of connections developed within the group itself. I'm not sure if you want an example. I can give you an example. Sure. Do you want an example? Okay, I'll give you the example. So imagine a therapy group consists of 5 people from different backgrounds who struggle with anxiety and social isolation. The foundation matrix, the pre-existing influences, before even stepping into the group, each member carries with them. So for example, there might be a girl called Alice, a young woman called Alice. She grew up in a culture where expressing emotions was discouraged, making her hesitant to open up. Then there's Ben, raised in a family that valued independence over seeking help, so he struggles with relying on others. There's Carlos, who comes from a community where mental health issues are stigmatized, making him feel ashamed of needing therapy. These pre-existing influences then form part of this foundation matrix, shaping how each person initially approaches the group. So the group matrix then is the group process where the members begin to interact with each other. And from our example above, there's a unique web of communication and relationships develop. So for example, Alice hears Carlos express his fears about stigma, which resonates with her own struggles. So she feels safe enough now to open up. Ben begins to recognize that needing help doesn't mean weakness, as he sees others sharing their vulnerabilities. Carlos sees the group accepting and supporting him, which challenges his belief that mental health struggles must be hidden. So over time, the group matrix becomes a powerful, evolving network of trust, support, and shared understanding. And it is this that helps members reframe their past conditioning from the foundation matrix and develop healthier ways of relating to themselves and others. So the foundation matrix explains why people enter the group with certain fears, resistances, or expectations, social stigma, upbringing, culture. The group matrix is what happens inside the therapy group, shaping new experiences, insights, and healing through shared interactions. So that's the summary of what we're dealing with. Now, now it comes to when you're a therapist and you run a group, how do you actually record it, think about it, analyze it, write an article about it? And this is where I think the Matrix Representational Grid can really help emerging clinicians, trainees, and also experienced clinicians. So initially, it, I think, was developed really partially as a research tool, so you could analyze group dynamics at a group at a group as a whole level. And that didn't really exist before this. And it focuses on the unconscious aspects of group behavior, while a lot of other tools only focus on conscious aspects of self-report or observable dialogue. So this whole matrix representational grid is based on Fuchs's idea of the group matrix. And it is a diagrammatic approach. So it's a diagram. And here it is. Don't get scared. We're going to learn how to fill this out today. That's what my talk is about. So no stress. And I will put up the article on my website if you want it, and I'll also put the slides up on my website. So it looks a bit overwhelming when you first look at it. But I will go through this grid shortly, step by step, and teach you. But I also want you to know, like in my days, I might put 8 circles and I would put arrows across of who talked to who, what the themes were, and then I'd just write up the session before I was introduced to this. So this is a much more structured method, and that's why it's good for research, and it's good for comparing your group at the beginning and has it moved to a healthier way of working, of helping the members in it. So you can observe and analyze group interactions. You can assess therapeutic and dynamic factors in groups. And it really, really does a good job at representing visually, if you're a visual person, where the group is at. You can just look at it and go, yeah, right. And where you can also conduct research into unconscious processes. So each group is obviously different, and we teach students to usually summarize their group with a group theme. And that's why at the top right there, you can see the word group theme. That's where my little cursor is. So sometimes there's 2 themes, sometimes there's 1. We try and sort of summarize them. And that can sometimes be called the group focal conflict. It's another word for it. So let's go to the next slide. So this is, now I'm going to show you how this whole thing starts. So you've got, I'm just going to try and, can you see the cursor? You've got these 3 circles. Yeah. So we're obviously talking about psychoanalytic theory and group analytic conceptualizations. And if you don't know anything about them, just bear with me. So with group theories, I've just quickly listed the main ones that would be good to read for people trying to understand groups a bit more, which is Bion. I'll cover his basic assumptions for concepts for group processes later. Fuchs, who developed group analysis, this group as a whole concept. Yalom in the 1970s has written a lot about psychotherapy groups. Agazarian and Peters are really the people that have research tools closest to the matrix representational grid. I would say theirs is a precursor, but then Goran Ahlin has taken it to another level. And block and crouch are also influential in that the determinants, which will be the lines that cut across the circle, they did a lot of research into determinants of what gives good outcomes from group therapy. So we've got the outer circle, we've got the middle circle, and we've got that yellow inner circle. So the outer circle is often a group that is very loosely held together, non-committal, superficial in fashion. And it is hard to tell, in fact, if it is a group at all. So the individuals are easily distinguished and prominent in their different ways. That's your blue outer circle. Then if you jump to that yellow inner circle, that's the other extreme. So it's like a dense group, closely held together, and it seems to be one unit without any apparent distinguishing sort of individuality in the members. Like the group, it's as if it's merged. It would be like a cult. Then you've got the pink middle circle, this one here. And that is sort of the middle between the two extremes, where all the intermediary forms can be found. And the middle circle is really what Goran Ahlin felt was a working group. Yeah, that's where you want it to be. So what are the factors that together determine the state of the group, and what determines therapeutic change? And that's, like I said, has been researched by Yalom and Block and Crouch. And what determines change, they're called determinants, yeah? So they're called therapeutic group determinants. And that's where, like, you're mapping the level of insight, where the group is at. It's like a scale of 1 to 5. So what Ahlin has done, he's picked 8 factors based on the research by Block and Crouch, and he's called these determinants, and they determine change and development in group states. So we're now looking at these sort of 8 lines, but you probably can't see they have 5 little bubbles. And these bars, I've color-coded them, all represent a different determinant. And they all have 5 stations. So what are these key determinants in the matrix representational grid? So you've got 8 lines that dissect the circles like a pizza, like a cake. And these 8 are what you're watching when you're working with groups of where the group is at. So these are the factors that promote therapeutic change in groups and development. So, and that's what starts to map the unconscious sort of group matrix, what we call the group matrix. So I'm just going to go on each determinant line. We have 5 stations, they're called. 3 are at the point where the circle crosses it, and 2 are not crossed by a circle. They're in between the circles. So the outer ones, the number 1s, correspond to the general characteristic of the outer circle type group state. And the innermost will be your number 5. So that's your dense merged circle. So then let's look at the headings for each determinant. I'm just quickly going to say it and I'll go through it as well. Communication flow, imagery, emotional climate, self-disclosure, acceptance, relating pattern, authority pattern, and boundary character. So let's pick communication flow. So what you can see in that table there, but I know it's hard to read, but in his PhD thesis where he came up with all of this, I just wanted to show you the different stations. So remember that I'll just flip back. Sorry. It won't let me go back. So the number 1 level is non-verbal, small non-verbal exchange, so largely silent. Number 2 level, a few scattered verbal comments, varied non-verbal communication. 3, that's your middle circle, free-floating interchange, few and only short silences. 4 is vivid, so continuous rich exchange, no silences. Members talk one at a time, not over each other. Number 5, frantic. So there's excited, frequent interruptions, members talk at the same time, fight to have their say. So it's a different level. So I feel like by him having these stations, it hones trainees of group analysis to sort of think about their group. Well, what was communication flow like? What did it look like? Let's switch to imagery. So imagery is, again, has these 5 stations, and it evaluates more the qualitative content of the group dialogue. So let's look at number 1. It's factual. Concrete facts are exchanged. Concrete advice is given. Then you can have sort of clarifying. Then outside the group, clarifying, confronting. Let's go to 3. Group mirroring and interpreting. So the group recalls shared group experiences. There's some interpretive work. Then you've got metaphoric, signifying object relations. But they're not conscious of the conflict. And then mythic, you're dealing with archetypal, ethnic, or cultural sort of images. Emotional climate, I think that's another really important one, where you assess the expressed, observed emotional states in the group. I haven't typed them out, but hopefully you can read it. So level 1 is this indifferent, hardly any or no expressions of feelings. Level 2, detached, restricted amounts of low intensity feelings shown. Nurturing, realistically varied fullness and level of feelings shown. Dense, a high level of intense emotions of longer duration. So heightened anxiety. Overwhelming, oppressive and exhaustive emotional climate. High anxiety, some psychosomatic reactions. So again, it sort of gives this scaffold for the beginning therapist to think about what's happening in my group. Then you've got self-disclosure. That's the amount of verbal sharing of individual inner worlds. And again, we've got this these stations, are like number one, are the inner worlds concealed in all the group? No revelation, pressure is shown, exceptional, like one member sometimes opens up, some group pressure for others to share their intimate matters with the group, common self-revelation is asked for and done selectively in all the group frequently. 4, dominating, so there's a high pressure for unrestricted openness. Attempts for privacy are attacked on principle. Scapegoating might occur. Confessional. There's this uniform, excited, even competitive level of revelations of pathology. So again, you've got this scaffold to map your group. I don't know if you want me to go through all of the 8. What would you like? You obviously can read them in the article. So acceptance, I'm just going to pick 1, scanty, like group loosely held together. Acceptance support only comes from the conductor. Level 3, we feeling expressed in the group, generally caring for deviance shown. And then 5, engulfing, overprotective, uniformity, symbiotic, a merger climate, and deviance may be expelled. Then you've got relating pattern. Again, we're looking at like the type of relating pattern. So reflective, sort of playing together, relating on fantasy and reality. You can get this transferential, triangular level is sort of what we mostly look for. Obviously, you can get a 2-person transference on a dyadic level. You can get, he's got ritualistic, the sort of deep transferential acting on what we call part objects, but you've got to study theory to know what that is. Authority pattern is a really good one, where you've got, number 1, no authority accepted. And there's this aggressive counterphobic dependency. And then number 3, you've got this striving for collectively shared responsibility and authority. That's what we're looking for. Totalitarian, this constant omnipotent leader, dictatorial. That's what we want. But often there can be a push to make someone that. You also got to look at the boundaries. Are they rigid or are they unbounded? Are they adequate? So again, you're assessing on this determinant. And remember, all these 8 determinants have been researched and tell you if you're going to have a good outcome from the group therapy, which is important, I guess. So coming back to the grid, we've quickly whizzed through those 8 determinants: communication, boundary, authority pattern. We've whizzed through the circles. And we've whizzed through the stations. So this is your tool to represent your group visually. If you want to do research into your group, map the beginning, map the middle, map the end. And you can also assess the therapeutic factors. So that's the Matrix Representational Grid. And this is what one looks like that you've filled in. So this is an example. Let me take you through it. At the top left, here, you've got this circle where you record who's present. Absent is over here, outside the circle. The session number. Here, I've got 2 sessions comparing the progress, but you would just have one date. This is just for an example. And you can see, for example, that female B need to have a few genogram skills. Female B was not present. And this is just an example by Goran to show you how the group has moved. So this says number 2, this says number 3. So we're able to sort of map change that is taking place unconsciously in the group as a whole. So whoops, I go back. I'll skip one. I'm just going to stop it there and then re-record.